And we're back with Jonas Hagos. He's the CEO and chairman of Civilian Force Arms. And before Jonas was an entrepreneur, he was a soldier and a refugee. So let's talk about that a little bit. So tell me about your first few years. You were initially born in a refugee camp?
Yep. Parents Ethiopian, migrated to Sudan in the late 70s. Was born in 82 in a refugee camp. We're Greek Orthodox. Obviously, most of you know Sudan.
Yeah.
It's a majority Muslim country. We were protected by the UN, I believe. NATO, I'm not sure if NATO was there, but we weren't liked very much. It was rough. We were poor. And
what was it like in the refugee camp? Do you remember much of anything from it, or?
Yeah, actually, I was old enough to remember because I was 9 when I came back when I came to the States.
Okay.
I can remember we didn't have much money for food, so my mom would actually make moonshine to feed us.
Really?
Alcohol was illegal in that country, and if you're caught, it's punishable by death or imprisonment. So I recall my mom would have to hide the liquor when the guards would come and pretty much raid your house just to see if they could bust you. It was hot. It was miserable.
I can imagine.
Disease infested. But we had a good mother. She took care of us as best she could.
And so, there wasn't in your background, when the guns actually start to become a part of your background? Was it? I'm pretty sure it happened later on, of course, not when you were 9, but.
So I can recall my first exposure to gun. I believe I was 7. I'm sure I've seen them.
Okay, maybe I was wrong. It was when you were 9.
So the guards would come and they'd have these big AKs. Imagine being a 7-year-old. I mean, these guys are about 6'5", standing tall, and you're seeing with these big AKs. And my mom would tell me, don't look at the soldiers in the eyes or in the face, and don't definitely look at the guns. So my parents kind of raised me to, guns were evil because they've seen them being used,
in a bad way,
in the bad ways. But so that was my first exposure to gun. And when I came to the States, I really didn't shoot a gun until I joined the military. And I'm sure you're going to ask me questions about that. But yeah,
so
I was 7.
Say it again.
I was 7. Long story short.
Yeah, see, and here I was like, well, I'm sure it didn't happen when you were 9. and here it goes. It happened when you were 7. So, what's interesting about that is, like, for me growing up, I remember the first time I ever, like, really saw a real gun. For me, it was always in the hands of, like, police officers, I believe. And they were kind of scary to me. And then, of course, what I saw in movies, but I never really thought much of it above and beyond. Cops have guns. That's just what they do. The idea of it being in anybody else's hands for me was kind of like, didn't even, unless you were a criminal or something like that. And so after, so when you came to the States, where did you move to initially?
So we moved to Carroll Stream, which is the Chicagoland suburbs, about 30 miles from the city. Stayed about a year. My dad, so we thought my dad was rich. He had an old Buick, picked us up from the airport. I'm like, man, we hit it big. I'm high-fiving with my brothers and sisters. We show up to his apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. At the time, there was 4 of us. The youngest was born here. So 2 boys, 2 girls. So we had 2 beds in the room. So we were, living it up.
Yeah.
And I remember my dad telling me, go get a pop from the fridge. So I grabbed a pop, came back to the room, opened it, take a sip, give it to my brothers and sisters. My dad walked in, he goes, what are you doing? I'm like, well, he told me to grab a pop. He goes, a pop for every one of you guys. I'm like, holy smokes. I'm like, man, I'm liking this country, America. It didn't take
because you were so cousin. You were like everything, you'd have to share because you didn't have very much.
It was a luxury. Like once in a while, once a month, my mom would go to the, market, get us like the Coca-Cola, Pepsi bottles, and she'd bring it and we'd all have to, share it. So it was something. So I'm like, I can drink pop whenever I want. I'm like, dude, I'm in heaven.
Yeah, man. So, but no, it's funny, but it's weird because it puts a lot of things into perspective, especially just kind of the privileges that we do have in this country that we tend to forego or take for granted. Here you are as a young guy or young kid, and you're just happy with the fact that you can have your own soda.
Oh,
And, you know, and a lot of people here, we get mad when there's 9 cars in the Starbucks line. So,
you know, I find myself doing that, but
I do it too. That's how I know.
You get caught up with the moment, you know. But yeah. So I grew up in Carroll Stream, did about a year, then we moved to a Section 8 housing to the town over called Wheaton, Illinois. Mm-hmm. Very conservative, wealthy people live in this town.
Yeah.
And I had my own bedroom, so I was in heaven, and lived at this Section 8 housing until I joined the military. I went to a good high school, had some good teachers.
What was school life like?
You know, it was rough in the beginning because I had to take ESL classes. English is second language. I'm sure it changed now.
Yeah.
So I'd get made fun of. I'd be called all kinds of, you know, names for having an accent, could barely speak English. Mm-hmm. So I was highly motivated, and my parents did a hell of a job. They said, become an American out there. At home, speak your native tongue, but out there, understand and learn the language. So I excelled, and once I went into high school, I was able to take regular classes. And my accent left, and high school was fun.
High school was fun?
High school was fun.
Okay. High school, typically, it depends what you ask. Some people, for me, high school was fun, except when people made fun of me sometimes, but you know, Cry Me River. And so at that point, while you were in high school, was there, other than the time when you were back at the refugee camp, there were no experience with firearms at that point, or were there?
Like you said, I mean, you see it on, you know, in law enforcement, or you'll watch a movie, or, you know, I've never seen criminals with guns, but if you see a gun, it was on a cop. I was always curious. You know, I'll see a cop, they'll be talking to me, especially, you know, we had a cop at the high school, cool guy. Every time my eyes would venture into that gun, and I'm looking, you know, then one time he goes, you keep looking at my gun. I said, I'm sorry, man. He goes, no. He goes, you ever shot a gun? I said, oh, no, not in my household. He's like, well, you know, maybe when you get old. I said, yeah, whatever. But so outside of that, I never really held a gun in my life until I joined the military.
Okay. So we're going to take another break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the very first time you shot a gun. And then we'll talk about your experience in the Army.